Hi everyone, it's Heidi from flutterbyheidi.co.uk and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator based in the United Kingdom, and as you know I love a fun fold. So today I'm working with the gorgeous Cottage Rose stamp set, the Abigail Rose suite of products which is in our annual catalogue, to make this what I'm calling a four flap display card. I haven't seen anyone do this. I'm sure somebody probably has out there, but I just thought it was a great way. You've got a lovely card that when it's folded, and then when it is opened you get this fun flap, and that you could add all sorts of things to it. And then on the back there you've got a couple of panels for you to write on as well. It doesn't open completely flat, and that's, you know, if you wanted it to, you would just need to make this panel a little bit shorter in the middle, but there we go, that's what I've done. So I've got a little bit of a technique in here, which is some mirror stamping and mirror stamping on die cuts as well. So what I've done is I've done a separate video, so if you just want to see that technique, click below and I'll have the link in there to it. If you want to see the whole card, then keep watching and I will share it with you. So the suite itself is this lovely Cottage Rose stamp set with the cottage flower dies, and these dies are fabulous because they cut out the main flowers, but they've got lots of outlines as well for accents, and also this one that works both with the stamps in the stamp set, which I've covered up there, the stamps in the stamp set, but also with the DSP as well. So the DSP is this one here, and you can see it's loveliest of neutral colours. So basic black, we've got crumb cake, early espresso, petal pink, smoky slate, and some very vanilla. So you can see here lovely patterns on the one side, florals, and as I go through those I will show you the one at the back. You see loveliest of images. You could colour those if you wanted. Some fabulous petal pink stripes, gorgeous, you know, smoky slate as well. And this is the piece that works with this die. So, and the way this works is that you can see it covers, it just, if you angle it, you can see like that. So you could put a piece of this DSP on your card front, just trim it down smaller than the size of this, die cut one of these, and you get a lovely sort of like 3D floral image there. Or you can use that to die cut this stamp here. So stamp it on some scrap paper and then just pop it through with the die, and then on the same DSP you will see that there's a piece which is where the flower is angled over. If you flip your die over, you can see here, if you just turn that, that will also line up as well. So you've got lots of ways to use this large die to create some fun images as well. As you'll have seen over many years, I make myself a template out of some scrap card, and I then know it is retired Stampin' Up! Cardstock, because then I know it works with this weight, or with our weight of cardstock. We'll start by doing this stamping here. And as I say, I have done a separate video on how to do this, but it is really easy. So what I've actually done is part of it already. I have die cut myself some shapes out of the Very Vanilla, and I have stamped using some basic memento onto my silicone sheet. I've put my die on a scrap bit of paper and cut an aperture, which I've then lined up over that silicone mat. Stamp down, and then this is the only bit that's a little bit tricky is you just want to make sure you just add in one couple of corners and then lay it into that aperture very carefully. Ink up your stamp really well and then stamp over the top. And what you then get is a fabulous double-sided stamped image. Now, if you're using it on a card where you see the back as well, it's perfect. And the same sort of technique is really easy to do by just stamp on the front of one as well. So you're going to end up, you want two stamped images, one in this way and one where you've done the reverse as well. So let's put my stamparatus away. And let's crack on with some colouring. So with the colouring on these, I've kept it really muted. On this one, I've very much used, you can see, some crumb cake and hopefully a little bit of shine. I've got some Wink of Stella over the top there. And I've used some Old Olive and mint macaron for the leaves, just to add a little bit. Now the version I'm going to make now, I'm going to use the other colourway. So I've used very much the neutral brown tones in these with the petal pink. On this one, I thought I'd use those blacks and greys to make a black and grey card. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using my smoky slate instead for these. But I am still going to use a little bit of that mint macaron and Old Olive just to colour those leaves, to add a little bit of colour. And then I'm going to use perhaps a little bit of light flirty flamingo, I think, she says, hopefully. Grabbing my blends. Yeah, light flirty flamingo, and probably a bit of blender pen as well, just to add a little bit of colour into those. So I'm going to put all my pieces to one side, just so we don't get too distracted by those, and let's start with our colouring. So I'm going to pop a bit of flirty flamingo just into the centre of those petals. And it's just nice to just add a little sprig of colour, particularly when I'm doing black and white cards. Now obviously if you wanted to, you could make this very much, you know, blacks and greys. You know, you could use it then as a sympathy card maybe. And I say, all I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of pink into those, really over the sections with those lines already in there. So quite a sort of, you know, gentle bit of colour really, and obviously you could use whatever colour you happen to have to hand. So although the petal pink is a sort of pinkier pink, by the time I've added used my blender and added my Wink of Stella over the top there, it'll blend down to match with the petal pink. So I'm using my colour lifter. So colour lifter, I always say it doesn't so much lift the colour as move the colour. I mean, it can lift the colour, but particularly when you use it over on very vanilla, you can see that sort of changing that to a slightly different tone, and it's blending with the very vanilla to give that petal pink colour. So you can see there that's changed it to be a lot more muted. We'll do the same on our reverse image in a moment, and then I'm going to just come in with my light Old Olive for the leaves, and I'm just going to add a little colour to the base of each leaf, and again just where those veins on the leaves are, I'm just adding a little. And I wouldn't have thought to use these colours together, but I have to say it was when Shelley and Sarah were doing some demonstrating recently, and they used it to colour leaves, and I kind of went, oh, that's so pretty. A real vintagey kind of feel, which I felt worked really well for this card, because it's got those kind of sepia tones to it. And then I'm just going to come in, just add those leaves, and obviously being alcohol markers, they're just going to soak in there. Okay, and then I just added a little colour to these. It's almost like gypsophila, baby's breath I think is the other word for it, which I know isn't this colour, but okay, there we go. So there's our first image. I'm going to go away and colour them. I'll be back in a moment. So once you've coloured both of your images in with your Stampin' Blends, I've just coming in with my Wink of Stella and adding some to the petals. And you don't have to be too precise with this. You can just daub it as much or as little as you want. Only thing to remember is when you squeeze it, make sure you squeeze it away from your project. Ask me how I know, because otherwise you will get big drips on there if you're not careful. So hopefully you can see that just adds a little bit of shine to it, which is, I think, rather nice. So those are our two images, which I'm going to put to one side. Now we can get on with constructing our card. Now I've deliberately done this in advance, so you're not watching me cut. But as we go through, I'll talk you through the measurements, and I have done it in both inches and centimetres, and in US cardstock as well, because obviously you tend to make a shorter, slightly wider card than we do with our European international A4 cardstock. So to start off with, and the measurements for those will be on my blog and in the description bar below this. So if you look below this video, you'll see a little arrow at the bottom, somewhere around here. Just press that and it will expand the description box, and you'll see the dimensions in there along with all of the links. So to start off with then, you're going to need a piece of card for your base that is 20 by 14.5 centimetres. And the scoring for this card is so easy. It is literally 5, 10 and 15 centimetres. So that's our card base. You are then going to need a piece for the centre, and I'm using some smoky slate here, and this is 21 by 7 centimetres, and this is just going to be scored in half at 10.5 for our centre flap. Okay, the rest of it is just simple cutting squares or rectangles. You know me, I like to make sure that, you know, fancy folds should be, you know, fancy folds, they should be fun. So I'm just going to reinforce these score lines, make sure they line up. You do want to make sure these are nice and square, you know, that then they run perpendicular to each other. Okay, so there we go. You're just going to create a zigzag, quite simple. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some layers. So I've chosen this lovely paper here. So I've got 4 pieces, and I've cut a strip from my DSP that was 14 centimetres. Then I've cut 4 strips of 4.5 centimetres each. So I'm simply going to add those in order across, so that they run, the pattern runs across. Now you don't have to, you know, up to you entirely. The only thing to watch out is with the score lines. You'll see there that because it's dark card, you can't always see the score lines in terms of getting it the panel central. But there we go. Okay, third one. So I tend not to give out 2 sets of measurements while I'm working. 1, because I tend to get confused, and 2, because it's not always helpful, and I know I speak rather quickly, I'm sorry. Yeah, being a Midlander, I tend to speak a bit quickly. There we go. And by Midland I mean because I live in Warwickshire, which is right in the heart of England. Centre of the country is not very far from me at all. So we've done our 4 panels for the front, so we're going to flip that over. And for the back, you want 2 panels. I've got some very vanilla here, which is 14 by 4.5 centimetres. And you can then stamp those with whatever image you like. I'm actually going to take one of the flower images from this, and I'm just, because it's black and grey, I'm going to be using my Memento black ink, and I'm just going to stamp that image. Now you could use your leaf if you wanted to, and just, you know, you could create a whole border or just add accents as I've done there. Once we've stamped our images, those again can just fit onto the reverse. So double check the orientation if your pattern's got an orientation, and these 2 panels are going to go on those outer 2 sections of our card. And again, you could put some on the middle sections. I haven't, because 1, you know how many panels you're going to write on, but you could put a bit of DSP on there if you wanted to. But this way I've just got a nice section on each side, so message on one, sentiment on the other. You could just put 1 panel on if you wanted to, but just pop those like so. So there's our basic card. Told you it was easy. Next we've got our centre section, and we want 4 flaps. So I've actually gone away from the colours that are in the paper slightly because I've added in some basic grey here. So I've got 4 pieces which are 3 by 10.5 centimetres, so 2 for each side. So I'm going to pop those like so. So I'm just going to lay these out so you can see where they're going to go so that we can add our layers. I then have another 2 pieces for my front. So these are 6.5 by 10 centimetres. So they're just going to go straight onto the centre section here. I'm just making sure that the edge that I've cut, so you get a slight bevel on the edge, is the right way, and just line those up. So those are my 2 sections, and there are plenty of layers. These are 2 which are 6 by 9.5. Now if you wanted to, you could stamp on these. You could stamp the flower image. If you wanted, you could add some leaf images. I'm just keeping it simple to act just as a layer before I put my stamped and die cut flowers on. And again, if you didn't want to die cut, you could just stamp straight onto these panels as well. So if you haven't yet, got into die cutting, you don't have to. Okay, so now we're going to take our 2 images and we're just going to add these on each side. It does come, the mirror image does come up slightly lighter. I prefer to leave it that way rather than stamping again and again. The problem is if you re-stamp it, because you could ink up and stamp again, if you move it at all, you might get a slightly blurry image, and I'd rather have a fainter, clear image than a blurry one. So I'm just going to pop some dimensionals onto the back there, keeping away from the very outside edges, like so, and just pop that in place, and then do the same with my reversed image. Probably looks odd me putting dimensionals onto what is actually a stamped image, but there we go. So there's our centre panel. So pop that to one side. I've then got 4 pieces of the DSP, and I've taken that lovely leaf one, and these are 2.5 by 10 centimetres, and I'm just going to pop those face down so that hopefully I add the glue to the right side, because let's be honest, it wouldn't be the first time I've added the glue to the wrong side. So again, I'm using Tombow on these. I mean, you could use a seal as well. I like Tombow when I'm adding layers, simply because it gives me that little bit of wiggle room. And as I said, I'm not great with I'm not always great with seal, and because it sticks so firmly. I mean, you can, if you make a mistake, just as a tip, if you're using seal or double-sided tape and you really, you don't manage to get it lined up properly, what you can always do is take your heat gun and then use your heat gun just to heat it up, and that will release the adhesive slightly, and you should be able to peel it off and just adjust. Make sure you heat it up well and be very careful. So there are our 4 panels. And then all we've got left to do is do our sentiment. So I've got my little happy birthday here, and I've just got a scrap here which I'm hoping is big enough of Very Vanilla, and all I'm going to do is ink that up. Now I'm going to trim this so I'm not too worried about getting it straight away, because otherwise you're going to get a fabulous view of my head. Gosh, in fact, I've actually done. Do you know what? I'm not gonna mess with that one. I've actually managed to do it reasonably straight. Woohoo! Makes a pleasant change. So then I'm just going to grab a little bit of. What card have I got to hand? I was just going to grab a little bit of something like some smoky slate, or some basic grey maybe. Here we go. Just a scrap of basic grey that I've got. And I'm just going to add that on. Now you could trim that down if you wanted, because I've actually managed to stamp it onto a narrow bit. I'm not going to bother trimming that down. On my original one, I hadn't stamped it quite straight, and so I did trim it right down to be a skinny happy birthday. But on this one, because I've done a reasonable job, so I'm just adding this now to my scrap piece, and I'm just going to trim the outside. Like so. There we go. Okay, so finally, and this is the last bit where we're sort of the technique of really constructing it comes to. So what you want to do is take your flaps and you want to just add glue to one end, and I'm just going to come in and line that up. You'll see on here I line those up just below, so there's a little bit of the DSP, not quite to the centre, and it will stick out slightly to the other side, and you want to do that top and bottom. So again, I'm just going to come in, do the same here, not quite to the centre fold, line it up with the bottom of your card there, and then do the same on the opposite side. So again, use that centre line, use the top of your card to line it up. And I say, you're not coming right to the centre on those. And then while it's still wet, you just want to close it up and then use that to line those up together. There we go. Like so. Okay, so those are our flaps. Then it's a similar process with this one, but you're going to turn over and add glue just to the left hand side for about 4 centimetres, so not quite halfway. And we're going to layer that in between the two. There we go. Fold it in half to make sure that's in place. Make sure it's lined up, so you might want to, just as I've done there, just lift up very slightly and just adjust. And I'm coming to the far edge. Fold it over on the outside, add some adhesive to that section and fold over. Hold it in place for a few seconds, and the wet glue obviously does its magic there. There we have our card. We can add our sentiment, and I'm adding that to the inside so that it's easy, you know, it's on display once you open your card, and I can just use a couple of dimensionals on there. Obviously it does make it quite a thick card, so it might not be ideal for posting, but there we go. Just centre that. But there we have our smoky slate version in basic black, along with our neutrals, crumb cake and petal pink version. I think either of those would be loved by the recipient. As you can see, they fold up flat. Oh, I forgot to say, you'll need some DSP for those, which I've forgotten to cut. I will put the measurements on the back there, just for you to put them in. I knew there was something I'd missed, but hey, there we go. I hope you like them. Please do subscribe to my YouTube. I am getting back into my regular YouTube, so you should find more fun folds coming your way and more 3D projects as well. Thanks for bearing with me during my difficult time, and it's lovely to be back crafting again. So any subscribers would be gratefully received. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon. Bye bye now.